massive operations hub, dominated by a glowing LED logistics wall. CEO Natalie Brooks walks briskly, heels clicking like a metronome. Michael Torres, a single father, kneels by a control panel. He looks up. "Morning, Ms. Brooks," he says politely. She doesn't stop, doesn't turn her head, passing him like wallpaper. Executive meeting begins. Multi-million-dollar contracts are on the line. 30 minutes in, the order tracking system suddenly freezes. Every screen flashes violent, rhythmic red. Critical system failure. Panic erupts. Tech teams are paralyzed. Investors stare at watches. The man she ignored now stands behind her, holding the only solution. The man's name is Michael Torres, 46 years old, a single father with a quiet strength that most people mistake for simple passivity. His hands are covered in a thin layer of dust and grease, but his eyes move with the analytical precision of a grandmaster playing 3 games of chess at once. Back home, his 9-year-old daughter Isabella is his entire world. She's a bright, energetic girl who waits by the window every evening for her father's return. To the world, Michael is just a senior maintenance technician, a man who crawls through vents and swaps out fried circuit boards in the middle of the night. But Michael's history is hidden deep within his HR file. Years ago, he was the director of global operations for a rival logistics giant. He wasn't just a manager. He was an architect of the very systems that drive modern commerce, a man who used to sleep in 5-star hotels and fly private. He walked away from the corner office and the 6-figure bonuses after a family tragedy left Isabella with only him, choosing a life where his time belonged to his daughter, not a corporation. He traded the stress of the boardroom for the stability of a technical role, a job that allowed him to be home by 4 p.m. to help with math homework and cook dinner. He is a ghost in the machinery, a man who understands the why behind every line of code and every copper wire in the building. Often, he watches the young executives rush by with their tablets, noticing their small mistakes and inefficient routing, but he keeps his mouth shut to protect his peace. He finds a strange, meditative comfort in the hum of the servers, a sound that used to represent pressure, but now just represents a job well done. The CEO, Natalie Brooks, is 40 years old, a powerhouse of efficiency, ambition, and singular focus. She built this company into a global titan through sheer willpower. But along the way, she stopped seeing the small people who keep the engine running. To her, employees are either revenue generators or overhead, and Michael is strictly overhead, a line item to be managed and minimized. She lives in the world of high-level strategy, 5-year plans, and global acquisition targets, where individual humans are often just data points on a spreadsheet. She has become so focused on the horizon that she no longer notices the ground beneath her feet or the people holding the ladder she climbed. 2 months ago, Michael sent a detailed internal email to the Technical Oversight Committee and CC'd Natalie. He warned them about a specific configuration error in the redundant backup servers, a flaw that would only trigger during peak transaction volume. The email was never opened. It was buried under thousands of more important messages from investors and marketing directors. Natalie's assistant had flagged it as low-priority maintenance, assuming a technician couldn't possibly understand the architecture of a global network. On this particular Tuesday, Michael is performing a routine diagnostic on the primary power distribution panel near the executive suite. He sees Natalie approaching. Her presence radiates authority and expensive perfume, the sound of her heels echoing off the marble floors like a warning. "Good morning, Ms. Brooks," Michael says, his voice calm and respectful, a courtesy he offers to everyone from the janitor to the chairman. Natalie doesn't acknowledge his existence. She is looking at her phone, her mind already 3 hours ahead of the current moment. She brushes past him, her sleeve almost catching on his tool belt, without a single word or a glance of recognition. To her, He is just a shadow in a blue uniform, a temporary fixture of the hallway, no more important than the light fixtures he maintains. Michael sighs, not out of anger, but out of a deep understanding of the arrogance that precedes a fall. He remembers when he used to be that arrogant, when he thought that controlling numbers meant controlling fate. He looks at Natalie's back, seeing the image of himself 10 years ago, powerful but isolated in his own empire. He goes back to his work, tightening a terminal that felt a bit loose, knowing that the system he warned about is currently groaning under the weight of the morning's global orders. He knows the math, the server load is climbing, the backup handshake is failing, and the geniuses in the IT department are oblivious. He looks at his watch, 9:28 a.m. In exactly 2 minutes, the system will hit the threshold he predicted in his ignored email. He doesn't want to be right. He wants the company to succeed. But he knows the physics of the grid don't care about Natalie's ambition. He gathers his tools, closes the panel, and begins to walk toward the main ops center, not because he was called, but because he knows he's about to be needed. The invisible man is about to become the most important person in the building, and he hasn't even broken a sweat. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere is electric with the scent of success and expensive coffee. Natalie is in the middle of a high-stakes presentation to a group of international venture capitalists, a deal worth $300 million. Behind her, the giant LED wall is a symphony of moving green icons, each representing a container ship or a cargo plane currently in transit. Then, without warning, the symphony turns into a nightmare. The music of commerce stops dead. A single icon in the center of the screen turns blood red, then another, then an entire row. Then the entire map begins to flicker like a dying candle. The moving map of global logistics stutters. The data refresh rate drops from milliseconds to nothing. Natalie stops mid-sentence. She turns to the screen, her heart skipping a beat as the word timeout begins to scroll across the main display in cold digital letters. This isn't just a glitch. It's a total loss of visibility. If they can't track the cargo, they can't fulfill the contracts, and the insurance liabilities will start piling up in minutes. The investors begin to whisper, the already fragile trust now standing on the brink of collapse. Natalie feels a cold sweat running down her spine as she realizes the deathly silence coming from the operations centers. The investors lean forward, their faces changing from interest to skepticism, and then to cold concern. One of them whispers to another, "Is this the reliability we were told about?" The question hangs in the air like a death sentence. In the IT control room, the air is thick with panic. Fingers are flying across keyboards, but the screens are unresponsive. The head of technology, a man named Kevin with a fancy degree and very little field experience, is shouting orders that make no sense. Reboot the primary cluster, clear the cache, call the cloud provider. He is throwing everything at the wall, hoping something sticks. They are checking for a cyber attack. They are looking for a ghost in the cloud. They are looking for anything but the actual problem. But the problem isn't in the cloud. It's in the physical handoff between the primary and the redundant systems, a mechanical failure of logic. Natalie's phone begins to vibrate uncontrollably, alerts from regional directors around the world. System down in Singapore, lost contact with the Rotterdam terminal. The company is flying blind, and every minute of silence is costing them $4 million in penalties and lost trust. Natalie tries to maintain her composure. "It's a minor synchronization lag," she lies to the investors. "Our team is already resolving it." But she looks through the glass wall of the boardroom into the ops center, and she sees the chaos. She sees her top engineers sweating, arguing, and looking completely lost, their expensive degrees failing them when the real world hits the fan. Michael is standing at the edge of the room, his arms crossed, observing the frantic movements of the IT staff with a calm, detached focus. He knows exactly what happened. The auto failover parameter was set to a legacy value that couldn't handle the new high-speed data stream. It's like a massive bridge that was built to hold 10 trucks, but the software just sent 1,000 across it at once. And the bridge didn't collapse, it just locked its gates. Michael walks toward the lead engineer. "You need to reset the gateway handshake manually and increase the buffer size," he says quietly. Kevin, the head of IT, doesn't even look at him. "Not now, maintenance. We're in a crisis. Go fix a light bulb or something. This is high-level network architecture." Michael doesn't get insulted. He doesn't have time for ego. He knows that the longer they wait, the more data will be corrupted. "The light bulbs are fine, Kevin," Michael replies. "But your handshake logic is stuck in a recursive loop because the timeout is too short." Kevin pauses for a second, stunned that the maintenance guy even knows what a recursive loop is, but his arrogance wins. "Security, please escort Mr. Torres out of the ops center," Kevin screams, drawing the attention of the entire boardroom. Natalie catches Michael's eye through the glass. For the first time in years, she actually sees him. She remembers him from the hallway, the man she walked past like he was nothing. She sees the calm in his eyes, a stark contrast to the frantic, useless energy of her highly paid executives. She remembers a name from a buried email. Torres. She realizes the name on the email matches the face in the room, and the warning matches the disaster. She stands up from the boardroom table, ignoring the investors, and walks out into the ops center. The tension is so thick it's hard to breathe. The red lights are reflecting off every surface like blood. She walks straight to Michael, stopping right in front of him. "Can you fix this?" she asks, her voice low, sharp, and stripped of all corporate jargon. Michael looks her in the eye. He doesn't gloat. He doesn't mention the hallway or the ignored greeting. He just nods once. "I warned you about this configuration 2 months ago, Ms. Brooks," he says. "I can fix it, but I need you to tell your IT lead to step back from the console and let me work." Natalie doesn't hesitate. She turns to Kevin. "Get away from the desk, now, and don't say another word." The room goes silent. The only sound is the hum of the cooling fans and the rhythmic ping of the error alerts as the invisible man steps into the light. If you believe that small warnings ignored can lead to massive disasters, subscribe to witness the moment the lights turn green. How would you feel if the person you ignored was the only one who could save you? Michael sits down at the console. His fingers move across the keys with a fluidity and speed that shocks the entire IT team. He isn't hacking in a cinematic way. He is speaking a language the system understands, a language of logic, flow, and structural integrity. He opens the redundancy configuration log, and there it is, exactly what he predicted in the email that no one read. The failover threshold was set to 10,000 packets, a setting from 5 years ago, but the new contract push had surged to 50,000 in a single second. The system didn't crash because of a virus or a failure. It crashed because it was too small for its own success, and it didn't know how to ask for help. Michael doesn't just turn it off and on again. He begins to rewrite the routing logic in real time, typing code that bypasses the corrupted buffers. He is forcing the secondary server to take the full load while the primary bleeds out its queue, a high-wire act of digital engineering. He is doing in seconds what a team of 10 engineers couldn't do in an hour because he knows the skeleton of this system. Natalie stands behind him. She observes his rough but skillful hands, each command he enters bringing a strange sense of stability amidst the storm. She suddenly realizes that a person's value lies not in the suit they wear, but in the weight of the knowledge they possess. She sees his Isabella lock screen on his phone, a small, smiling girl in a park, and she feels a sudden, sharp pang of guilt that hits her harder than the system failure. She realizes that this man, this maintenance guy, has a whole life, a brilliant mind, and a level of integrity she hasn't seen in her inner circle for a long time. She realizes she was paying Kevin $200,000 a year to be arrogant, while Michael was keeping the lights on for a fraction of that. Michael enters the final command. Force sync, gateway alpha, override buffer limits. He hits the enter key with a firm, deliberate tap. For 5 long seconds, nothing happens. The room holds its breath. The LED wall stays dark. Then, the red lights on the wall flicker and turn a soft, steady amber. Then, one by one, the global map begins to populate with green icons. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Singapore comes back online. Rotterdam flashes green. The data flow begins to normalize and surge back to full speed. The timeout messages disappear, replaced by the most beautiful words Natalie has ever seen. System health. Optimal. The investors in the boardroom are standing up. They are clapping. They think the company saved the day with its high-tech resilience. But inside the ops center, there is a different kind of silence. A silence of deep realization and shame from the tech team. Michael stands up. He wipes his hands on a clean rag from his pocket and steps away from the console as if he had just changed a light bulb. He doesn't wait for a round of applause. He doesn't look for a thank you from the executives who ignored him. The configuration is stable for now, Ms. Brooks, Michael says, his voice still that same calm, steady baritone. But you need to update the hardware at the Frankfurt hub by Friday, or this will happen again. Your growth has outpaced your infrastructure. Natalie looks at the screen, then back at Michael. She is speechless. She feels small in the presence of his competence. Kevin tries to step back in, trying to save face. Great job. We'll take it from here. Michael, you can get back to your, maintenance duties in the basement. Natalie turns on Kevin with a look that would freeze a volcano. No, he stays. You're the one who needs to go find something else to do, preferably in another company. The room gasps as Natalie effectively fires her CTO in front of everyone, but no one argues. She walks Michael back toward the boardroom, past the stunned executives and the cheering investors. She stops him at the door. You didn't just fix a system, Michael. You saved a $300 million deal and the jobs of 10,000 people. Michael looks at his watch. It's 3:32 p.m. I appreciate that, Ms. Brooks, but it's 3:32 p.m. My daughter Isabella gets out of school in 28 minutes, and I never miss picking her up. She's waiting for me. Natalie is stunned. She is used to people begging for 5 minutes of her time, begging for a promotion, begging for her attention. And here is the man who just saved her empire, and his only concern is being there for his daughter on time. She sees the truth in that moment. Michael isn't working here because he has to. He's working here because he chose this life. He is the most powerful person in the room because he doesn't want anything from her. He already has everything he needs. Go, Natalie says, her voice softening for the first time in years. Go pick up your daughter. We will talk tomorrow morning. I'll have my driver take you to the school so you're not late. Michael nods. Thank you, Natalie, he says, using her first name for the first time, and she realizes she likes the sound of it coming from someone who isn't trying to sell her something. He turns and walks down the hallway, the same hallway where he was ignored just a few hours ago. This time, as he passes people, they step aside. They watch him with a mix of awe and confusion. He doesn't notice. His mind is already on Isabella and the math homework they have to finish together. Natalie watches him disappear into the elevator. She realizes that her company's greatest asset wasn't a piece of software. It was a person she chose not to see. The next morning, the office is buzzing with the story of the maintenance miracle. Natalie arrives early, but she doesn't go straight to her office. She goes to the HR department and demands every piece of paper they have on Michael Torres. She reads every page. She sees the director of operations title from his past life. She sees the brilliant performance reviews, and she sees the tragedy of his wife's death that led him to resign. She realizes that her efficiency-first culture had created a wall that blocked out the most talented people because they didn't fit a specific corporate mold. She calls Michael into the executive boardroom, the same place where the investors had sat the day before. This time, the table is empty. There are no presentations, just 2 chairs and 2 cups of coffee. Michael enters. He is still in his blue technician uniform. He doesn't seem intimidated by the luxury or the mahogany. "Sit down, Michael," Natalie says. She pushes a printed copy of his 2-month-old email toward him, the one she finally read at 2 a.m. "I read this last night," she says, "and I want to apologize, not just for ignoring the email, but for ignoring the man who wrote it." Michael doesn't play the victim. "It's a big company, Natalie. Things get lost in the shuffle. People see the uniform. They don't see the person. I'm used to it." "No," she interrupts. "That's a poor excuse. Leaders are supposed to listen to the people who know the truth, not just the people who have the loudest voices or the fanciest degrees." She asks him why he didn't leave, why a man with his experience was content pushing a cart and fixing panels for 1/10 of what he used to earn. Michael talks about Isabella. He talks about the peace he found in the quiet work, the ability to be a present father without the weight of global crises on his shoulders every night. He tells her about the evenings watching the stars with his daughter, about the serenity of knowing he is truly living rather than just existing in the whirlpool of profit. Natalie listens, feeling no small amount of envy for his simple but full life. He tells her that he didn't need the title to feel successful. He just needed to know that his daughter felt safe and loved. Natalie realizes that Michael has a wholeness that she is missing in her own life. She has the money, but he has the peace. She offers him a new role, Director of System Integrity, a position with a massive salary increase, executive power, and a seat at the table. But Michael doesn't say yes immediately. He isn't tempted by the money. "I don't want to go back to the world of 80-hour weeks and missed birthdays, Natalie," he says firmly. "My daughter is 9 only once." Natalie nods. She expected this. "I'm not asking you to change your life for the company. I'm asking you to change the company to fit a better life for everyone." She tells him he can keep his 4 p.m. pickup. He can work his own hours, as long as he is the one overseeing the truth of their systems. She admits that she needs someone who isn't afraid to tell her she's wrong, someone who isn't trying to climb the ladder by lying to her. Michael looks at her. He sees the genuine vulnerability in a woman who is usually made of steel. He sees that she is actually trying to learn. "I'll do it on one condition," Michael says. "We stop ignoring the unseen people in this building. Every technician, every janitor, every driver, their feedback needs a direct line to the top without being filtered by people like Kevin." Natalie smiles. "That's exactly why I need you, to be the bridge." They shake hands, a deal made not with lawyers and contracts, but with respect and understanding. As Michael leaves the room, Natalie watches him go. She realizes she didn't just fix a system. She started fixing a broken culture. She realizes that the most expensive mistakes are the ones made by people who think they are too important to listen. 6 months later, the company is unrecognizable in the best way possible. The Michael Torres protocol is now standard, a system where technical warnings from the ground floor are prioritized over marketing hype. There hasn't been a single system lag or failure since that fateful Tuesday, because the person in charge actually knows how the hardware works. Michael still walks the hallways, sometimes in a suit for a board meeting, but often still in his comfortable work gear when he's troubleshooting. He isn't a shadow anymore. People know his name. They seek his advice. They respect his time. Every morning at 8:15 a.m., Natalie Brooks is standing by the main entrance. She isn't looking at her phone. She is greeting her employees by name, from the senior VPs to the night cleaning crew, listening to their small observations. She even requires senior managers to spend 1 day a month working alongside maintenance and field operations teams. Arrogance has been replaced by understanding, and work efficiency has skyrocketed not through iron discipline, but through connection. She realized that the view from the top is only clear if you know what's happening at the bottom. Michael still leaves at 3:45 p.m. every single day, no exceptions. And now other parents in the company feel empowered to do the same. The company's productivity actually increased when people stopped pretending to work late just to impress the boss. One afternoon, Natalie sees Michael at the elevator. "How's the math homework going, Michael?" she asked with a genuine laugh. "We moved on to science projects," Michael says, grinning. "We're building a model of the solar system tonight. Isabella says I'm the expert on internal structures." Natalie watches him leave. She feels a sense of satisfaction she never got from a stock price increase or a merger. She had spent years pretending not to see him, until he fixed the one thing she didn't even know was broken: her own perspective. The company didn't just become more profitable, it became more human, more resilient, more real. And in the end, that was the most important system of all. Michael and Isabella are seen in the park later that day. He is a hero to a billion-dollar company. But more importantly, he is a hero to a 9-year-old girl who has her father back. No one is invisible anymore, because the woman at the top finally learned how to look. The story of the unseen man became a legend in the industry, a reminder that the most valuable assets don't always wear suits. If you believe that the people behind the scenes deserve to be seen and respected, subscribe for more stories of hidden excellence, and leave a comment. Have you ever been the invisible person who saved the day? Tell us your story.